They gave me 30 days, just 30 damn days to tear down the cabin I'd built with my own 2 hands. 30 days to erase my dead wife's dream. That cabin, it was the only thing that kept me breathing through 2 years of grief. And you know who delivered the news? A woman in designer sunglasses standing on my property, her shades reflecting back the unfinished logs, looking right through me like I was nothing more than a stubborn weed in her perfectly manicured world. Didn't matter that the surveyor's report was still sitting in my truck, or that I had the 1952 deed in my pocket. Hell, she didn't even care that her precious HOA had no legal claim to my land. That's Georgina Wendell for you. Pinewood Estates HOA president, a smile cold as steel, like nobody had ever told her no in her whole life. But let me tell you something about carpenters, especially ones who've had life beat the stubborn into their bones. Every mortise joint I'd carved, every beam I'd shaped by hand came from a lifetime of working wood, learning patience. And she had no clue the strongest structures are always built to last, especially when you pour all your grief and hope into every nail. That April morning, the dawn broke cold over Clearwater Lake, turning the water silver, the pines pitch black against a sky just starting to pink up. I stood at the edge of my 2 acres boot, sinking into wet earth, holding that surveyor's map old Tobias Aldridge had handed me 3 months before. Every boundary marker driven into the dirt by Landry Wells' official seal, and all matched the coordinates down to the inch. This land was mine fair and square, bought with Margot's life insurance and 15 years of dreams that death couldn't scrub away. I can still smell the pine resin from those stakes, feel the rough wood under my palm as I walked the line. The mist rising off the lake made everything look like a dream except for the cold, hard texture of that wood and the sound of water lapping against the shore. Even the crunch of pine needles under my boots sounded like real life after 2 years of drifting through days like a ghost. Building that cabin, well, that was the first thing that had mattered since Margot died. We'd sketched it on napkins, her neat architect's handwriting everywhere, right down to the east-facing window to catch the sunrise over the water. The land sale went through in January, after months of hunting for just the right spot. Tobias was 86, moving into assisted living, and I swear he teared up when I told him I wanted to build a real log cabin. His father had bought that patch of ground in '52, long before Pinewood Estates even existed across the lake. At closing, Tobias handed me a battered box stuffed with yellow documents, letters to the county, and one from 1977, specifically stating this parcel wasn't ever part of the HOA. My lawyer checked it all clean title, no liens, no restrictions. Just 2 acres and a shot at breathing again. Declan, my boy, showed up that first morning, old pickup rattling down the dirt road. He's 16, dark-eyed like his mom, but with my stubborn jaw trying too hard to fill shoes, no kid should have to. He barely spoke after Margot's funeral, but the day I showed him those plans, something shifted. He looked at the sketches and just said, "We should add a loft." Mom would have liked that. First time he used past tense without his voice cracking. From that day, he was all in, brought his drone kit, his iPad, ready to document every step, like we were professionals, not just a broken-down carpenter and a grieving kid. We spent that morning marking the foundation, swinging the same sledgehammer my granddad once used. The sweat felt good. Declan flew the drone, learning 3D modeling from YouTube, visualizing it all he's got. Margot's knack for seeing how things fit. I watched him, something close to pride stirring, if grief hadn't dulled every feeling down to gray. At least we were together, not sitting alone in that house where her laughter still haunted the walls. By noon, I was teaching him about mortise and tenon joints, real log cabin stuff, slow, precise, the kind of work you have to respect. 20 years building furniture for folks who valued quality over speed, and finally I got to share it with my son. For a minute, I even forgot about the ache in my chest. That's when the silver SUV showed up, slow rolling down the dirt track, pausing about 50 feet away. Woman behind the wheel, maybe mid-50s, tight ponytail, expensive athleisure sunglasses so big you could see yourself frown in them. She didn't wave back, just stared, then backed out like she was filing me away under problem neighbor. Declan thought she was lost. I knew better. That night by the fire with the tent pitched and the stars bright over the lake, I found myself holding that letter from 77. Tobias's dad wrote the county to confirm this property was not part of Pinewood Estates HOA. Declan, staring at the lights of those massive homes across the water, said they wanted his land. Didn't want to take no for an answer. I folded the letter, feeling the distance not just in feet but in values. They had gates and rules. We had tools, each other, and Margot's dream. We're legal, I told Declan, probably more for me than him. We've got the paperwork, the permits, everything. There's nothing to worry about. But neither of us truly believed it. The fire popped, a loon cried somewhere out in the dark, and I dreamed of Margot at the water's edge, pointing across the lake. Woke up with my heart thudding, not sure if it was fear or hope. We started pouring the foundation the next day, fighting rain and April cold, the kind of setbacks that make you earn every inch. Some mornings we woke up to the site half flooded, pumping out muddy water before we could work. Declan never complained. His hands toughened up, and sometimes he'd just stare at his palms like they belonged to a new person. Margot always said woodworking taught patience better than meditation. She was right. By the third week, the concrete was cured, and we started on the floor joists. I'd ordered Douglas fir, paid extra for old-growth timber. Every beam I checked by hand taught Declan how one hidden knot could doom the whole house. Your mom taught me that, I told him. Build it to last. He picked it up fast, and I felt that flicker of pride again, brighter this time. The work was exhausting, but it was healing us slowly. Lunchtimes were quiet, eating sandwiches on stacks of lumber, staring at the water. Not the heavy silence of grief anymore, something easier shared. And then out of nowhere came Odette. 70 white hair in a long braid, face tanned and lined from decades outside. She walked up with a basket of fresh bread butter and a jar of coffee that tasted like heaven after weeks of instant. Thought you boys could use real food, she said, sitting with us on the unfinished foundation. She'd lived here 40 years, watched Pinewood grow from a fishing camp to what she called a sterile playground for rich folks who don't know a loon from a duck. She warned us about Georgina and the HOA. They don't like people who don't follow their rules, especially her. She runs it like her own little kingdom. I showed her the surveys and deeds. She nodded, troubled. Legal doesn't always matter when folks have lawyers and county commissioners in their pocket. Just be careful. She patted my shoulder and left, leaving us with full stomachs and a growing sense of unease. Sure enough, week 4 brought the confrontation. Declan was in town for supplies when Georgina showed up, this time with a lawyer and a security guy built like a linebacker. She got right to the point. We have reason to believe your property falls under HOA jurisdiction. You're building without approval. The lawyer flashed a map showing my land, colored the same as Pinewood's. I pulled out my own documents, showed them the 1952 survey and the deed. Your map is off by 200 feet, Declan said, showing drone footage. Georgina barely looked. Those old documents are superseded by our revisions. You need to check your facts. They handed me a cease and desist letter threatening lawsuits, $500 a day fines, demanding I stop work. I called the county clerk, said the records were clear. My land had never, ever been part of Pinewood Estates. They might have internal documents, but nothing's filed with us. The building inspector came by, signed off on everything, even complimented my joinery. Has can be territorial, he said, but they can't override the county. But the pressure kept building. I took everything to Margot's old law school friend, a guy with a cramped office over a hardware store and a sharp eye. He went through the files, then looked up and said, if their whole claim is built on an unofficial map, this is a slam dunk. But they'll fight. I thought of Declan, his calloused hands, that little spark in his eyes coming back to life. I wasn't backing down. Wasn't. Next came the board meeting, whole room set up like a trial. 30 Pinewood residents staring daggers. Georgina and the middle lawyer at her side. They tried to steamroll me with their map and their lawyer talk, but my guy just smiled and asked, "Where's the county survey? Who certified this?" When they admitted there was no official survey, the room went real quiet. Declan stood up, plugged in his iPad, and showed them the drone footage overlaying the GPS points on both maps, proving theirs was off by a solid 200 feet. The HOA lawyer tried to bluster, but the board started fracturing right there. My lawyer filed a quiet title suit requesting all their revision records. And the deeper we dug, the uglier it got. Documents half redacted, meeting minutes from 1995, where they openly talked about enforcing unapproved boundaries as internal policy. It was fraud, plain and simple. And then a twist, an anonymous ex-board member reached out whistleblower style, bringing memos Georgina had written herself. "Get it on our letterhead, most folks won't question it." My lawyer's eyes lit up. With this, we don't just win, we can get criminal charges. As the trial drew near, media caught wind of the story. Suddenly, we weren't just fighting for ourselves. Donations came in from strangers. Local folks formed a justice group. Even some Pinewood residents switched sides as the truth came out. The community changed. Odette led the charge for reform, and the whole state started talking about HOA abuses. At trial, everything came out. Jury heard from victims, saw the forged maps, the red-stamped rejected application, the profits Georgina made through her shell company. Her lawyer tried to blame bureaucracy, but nobody bought it, not with all that evidence, and Declan explaining how he'd mapped the land to the inch. The verdict, every count in our favor. $650,000 in damages. The judge referred the case for criminal prosecution. Georgina out, assets seized, new leadership at the HOA. Our cabin finished, the sun rising through the east window Margot always wanted. Now Declan's headed to college to study law. The old enemies. Some went to prison, some just faded away. Our fight inspired new laws, new protections for families just like us. So yeah, 30 days to tear down my wife's dream? Not a chance. We built something bigger, stronger, something no HOA or bully can ever erase. Justice takes time, but when you stand up, others stand with you. If you've ever had to fight for what's right, don't give up. Document everything, find your people, and push back. Now let me ask you, where do you draw the line between rules and justice? Would you fight back if it cost you everything? Drop a comment, share your story. I want to hear what you do, what you have done, because at the end of the day, that's how real change starts.